Thank you, Secretary Young, for the speech. The theme of this year's conference is Skilling for the Future.
Today, we'll address prominent VPET issues, share best practices and tactics for advancing VPET and skills development for a new era.
To kickstart the conference today, it's our honor to have the following keynote speaker to join us today. Mr. Olli-Pekka Heinonen, Director General of Finnish National Agency for Education, Finland.
Director General has held a number of leadership positions as a politician before, including Minister of Transport and Communications and State Secretary of Prime Minister.
He then became the leading public servant responsible for Finnish education in 2016. He has driven many new ideas and implemented new initiatives since then. Without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Director General.
Distinguished participants of the International Vocational and Professional Education and Training Conference 2020, it is really my pleasure to be able to take part in this important conference and to bring some insights from the experience of Finland when discussing the challenges of vocational and professional education and training. I would have loved to be in Hong Kong with you all there, but because of the circumstances of the COVID crisis, we have to learn new ways to communicate, and I hope that the connection will be functioning fine this way. I would like to, in a kind of a short period of time, to pick up kind of 6 seismic shifts that really move the way that we have traditionally seen education and training in our countries. Of course, there are many reasons why things are changing. We talk a lot about the impact of technology, and it is big. The question of artificial intelligence and its effect on our jobs and skills, digitalization, automatization, robotization, these are all issues that have a big impact also on education and learning. But it's not the only change, but I think the COVID crisis has shown us that how strong the interconnectedness in our societies is. The epidemic as such is a question of medicine, but we all now see that it doesn't kind of stay on that line of medicine, but it affects all sectors in our societies very strongly, also including education and training, and also, of course, our economies. And this all has happened on a global phase very rapidly. So it's important to understand that it's the kind of pace of change, how fast change is happening, but also the diversity of change because of the interconnectedness of many things in our societies. And that kind of stresses also the importance that things are much, much more kind of connected to each context. The context is changing all the time, and that has a huge effect also how we see jobs, skills, and competencies for the future. The first one of the 6 seismic shifts I would like to take up is the fact that we should change from talking about our education systems to talk about our learning systems. Education systems, when we talk about them, we often concentrate on the official and the formal education side. And that has played a central role in our societies, and it will remain to do so in the future. But still, that view is too narrow to tackle the challenges of learning. And for that reason, we must, in the future, kind of widen our thinking so that we're not only talking about the formal education, but we must utilize the possibilities of informal and non-formal learning. And that's actually in an individual's lives, most of our learning happens in informal and non-formal settings. And we should kind of be able to make that learning that happens in those circumstances visible and usable for individuals, for companies, and for the society as a whole. So it's not only something that we should kind of have CVs that consist of the formal diplomas and degrees, but we should be able also to include the parts of informal and non-formal learning that has happened and has created us certain competencies. And that's an entirely kind of different way of looking at the education system and the learning system, more holistic way, seeing the society as a whole as a learning platform. The second shift I would like to take up is the shift from mass education to personalized education and learning. Traditionally, we have seen that kind of educating everybody in our society is done so that we give everybody the same teaching and learning. And that has been the kind of big historical kind of progress of kind of bringing equality in education. But now we know that actually equality is not reached by trying to tell and teach everybody, and prerequisites and starting points of each individual are different. And we should be able to take those needs and starting points better into consideration when we are planning the development and learning paths for each individual. And again, that requires an entirely different way of mindset, that how we see and how we organize our learning in different educational and training institutions. The third shift is moving from seeing professionalism as a character of an individual to seeing it as a shared quality and a dynamic quality. The traditional way of kind of describing professionalist is saying that he or she is somebody who knows or is capable of doing certain things with high quality. And as we are seeing the challenges in today's working life, that is not enough. Actually, we need each other more and more to tackle the challenges of tomorrow. So we have to understand and learn the abilities of collaboration and cooperation. And that's not only enough, but as I said, as the context in the working life is changing all the time, it means that working and learning are integrating. Working and learning will become one thing. We are constantly learning with the changing context in the working life. And that means that we are much more kind of in our organizations, we are all learning together. So learning is a dynamic kind of activity. And in that sense, it means that also the way that we describe professionalism is actually somebody who can build new insights, skills, competencies, knowledge on the top what he or she already masters. And that leads us to the fourth shift, which is the shift from the recruitment-based HR activities to learning organizations, where everybody working in an organization is actually responsible of HR and responsible of taking the human capital of that organization forward. Recruitment will be important also in the future, but again, it's actually quite a stiff and slow way to make sure that each organization has the best possible skills and qualifications and human capital. To have a more better tool to tackle the rapidly changing world of work is actually to make sure that the culture of each organization is such that it supports continuous learning. It will mean that there must be an attitude where there is room for experimenting, finding new things, and there is also room for different opinions that how things should be done. And that also kind of changes the connection between organizations, companies, and educational institutions. Because in kind of learning organization model, the educational and training institutions should be able to support the learning processes of organizations constantly, bring the expertise of pedagogy and didactics to the use of organizations. And that is, at least from the Finnish point of view, a very big shift from the traditional way that how people have come into sit in vocational institutions to get a degree, to go to a situation where there's a constant dialogue between the working life and the education sector and institutions. My fifth seismic shift is a shift from fixed mindset to growth mindset. We are all aware of the Carol Dweck's idea that we should be able to not to see individuals as born with certain qualifications and staying like that. That some people are more talented and some people are born clever and others are not, and so be it. That does not kind of go well with what we know about the development of humans. But we know that each one of us have the ability to learn new things and get new competencies. And it's the task of our educational and vocational education institutions to find out that what are those areas of special talent that each one of us is having. I think we are starting to understand this growth mindset idea when we're talking about young people. But strangely, somehow, when we stop our height growth, when we don't get taller anymore, we kind of also think that our kind of cognitive kind of development stops there also. That once you become 20, then that's the way you're going to remain. You can take certain courses of learning new digital skills, but moving to a new level of mental capabilities is something that we don't really kind of enhance. The kind of research on mental models and mental development, developmental psychology has shown us that actually the development of our capabilities, it doesn't stop when we are 20, but the character of the brain, of the human brain, is such that it develops and evolves throughout the whole life period of a person. And that is an attitude change that we must take into consideration, especially when we're talking about educating and training the people, adults that are already in the working life, making sure that they have the ability to move to a higher levels of cognitive and mental development. And my last shift I would like to share with you is the shift from using a map to using a compass. Traditionally, we have tried to give, through education and training, everybody a map that they can use when they are moving to their own future. But as I said, when the context is changing all the time, the map doesn't stay intact with the changing context and circumstances. So a map is not enough, but we should be able to give the young people a compass that they can use when they are navigating their way to a future they are kind of looking for. And that again has a kind of a big kind of change on what are the skills and what kind of skills we are emphasizing in education and training. That it's not only that we give the knowledge and skills as such, but what becomes more and more important is the kind of values and the personality and the attitude of a people to use that knowledge and those skills for the best of themselves, of the working organizations, and of the society as a whole. And that kind of a character and attitude building is becoming more and more important in the field of education and training. These are the 6 kind of seismic shifts that I wanted to share with you, and actually also show a picture that what is the education system that we have built in Finland. It's actually the new vocational education and training system that has now been in power for 2 years in Finland. And it pretty strongly tries to take into use those kind of shifts that I was describing. So the idea of creating each learner, whether he or she is a young person or an adult, to develop a personal competence development plan for everybody. And actually, that plan takes into consideration what that person already knows. What are the skills that he or she has been able to acquire earlier through the formal, non-formal, or informal learning. And then concentrate on the things that that person doesn't already master. So there's the kind of personalization and the kind of learning system part in our reform. Then there is the versatile learning environments, being able to kind of reflect all the time between theory and practice. Always theory, practice, reflection is so important in our model, kind of taking the good parts of the institutional based vocational education and training and the kind of apprenticeship type of learning. And then having the kind of flexible study time for each individual, which suits best, and to have the broad-based qualifications that give not only the map for a certain vocation, but to give a kind of a broader compass, better tools to navigate in the changing working life, and also to be able to constantly learn to learn and also change to new vocations when that kind of shifts happen in the working life. So these are the points that I would like to share with you. And maybe in the kind of time of the COVID crisis, there's maybe one more shift that we should consider, and that is the shift from concentrating on efficiency in our institutions and in working life to kind of moving more to take into consideration also resilience. What is resilience? Actually, learning is resilience. Learning is something that we all the time increase our abilities to face unexpected situations and to recover from those changes we have not expected. And in that sense, we should again be able to create that learning mindset, growth mindset as individuals, as organizations, whether we are responsible of teaching vocational education or whether we are working life organizations. So with these ideas, I'm wishing you a very successful conference, and I hope to see you soon in person also. Thank you.